Can everybody see my screen with the Munis landing page on it? If it loads.
Yes.
Okay. The first thing I wanted just to show everyone is down here in the bottom right corner of your main hub screen, you have this link that says purchasing. That's where you will find everything that we're talking about today. And there's also an actual folder with all of the documents we're going to talk about for you all and this presentation at that link. So everything can be accessed at that link. We have some commonly used object codes, chart accounts that are specifically for frisks, commodity code chart. So all of that is at that link so that you can access it easily. So I wanted to let you all know that first so that you could do that. And what we're going to do is I'll do a brief overview of our purchasing policies and rules. And then Rachel will take over and go over requisition entry and the things that she's looking for. Okay, I don't know how to get that little screen off the middle. Do you all see the PowerPoint, or are you all seeing the PowerPoint with another screen on the Zoom in there?
Right now, I'm still seeing your Munis landing page. You
Not...
may need to stop sharing because it might be on a different window.
Oh, yeah. Try this again. Okay, now are we good?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna go over just some purchasing rules, policies, things like that, and then I'll turn it over to Rachel, and she'll go over the requisition entry, object codes, and all that fun stuff. For those of you that have been in the district for a while, this should just be a little bit of a review. Not much new as far as rules, but for those that are new, it's definitely important to know what this is. So here's the itinerary that we're going to go over: our policy, the types of procurement the district does, our small purchase procedures, what to do if you have to get quotes, sole source determinations, some information on vendors, and then Rachel will go into requisition compliance guidelines, what she's looking for when she's reviewing requisitions, if they're rejected, what to do, and all that fun stuff. So the district purchasing policy, this is not a policy that the district made up. This is actually state statute. We follow KRS 45A, and it pretty much says all purchases that we do have to be one of 5 types of purchases: either a small purchase, a non-competitive negotiation, which is a sole source, competitive sealed bidding, competitive negotiations, or through cooperative purchasing, where a larger organization has done one of those competitive sealed bids on our behalf. So that is what we have to follow for all purchases. That's kind of where the approved vendor list that I send out every month came from. And I will say, if you're not getting my email at the beginning of every month with the approved vendor list, please email me and let me know so I can add you to that. The approved vendor list is pretty much all vendors that have been either awarded a bid from our district or from the state or one of the cooperatives. So they're meeting these requirements of going through the bid process. Small purchase procedures. So our small purchase procedures are for purchases under $40,000 for the year. So you might only spend $500 on office supplies, but as a district, we're spending over $1 million for office supplies. That's why we have to go through a bid process. But this is more for the smaller things that we don't have bids for, where it's something unique or just something small. Our small purchase procedures pretty much say if we don't have a bid for something, you use these procedures. If it's an under $5,000 purchase, you can go wherever you want as long as they'll take a munis PO. Once you hit that $5,000 mark, you have to get quotes. We ask that you get 3 quotes. Try to have one of them be a minority, woman, or veteran-owned business if possible. And then we want to know which one you're using and why it is considered the best of the 3 quotes. It doesn't have to be the lowest, but there has to be an actual reason why you're not using the lowest and you're using the best. It can't just be because I like the company. It has to be they offer training with whatever we're buying or something like that. So make sure when you are getting quotes, if you're not using the lowest quote, that you also include why they're considered the best quote. If you reach that $10,000 mark, which I don't think any of you all ever will, but you never know, those quotes have to be formal quotes in writing. And then once we reach that $40,000 mark, that's where we have to go through a competitive bid process, which is a multi-month process with board approval and all that fun stuff. We do have a 3-quote form that's at that link that I showed you all at the beginning that you can use. That's pretty much just for you for documentation in case the auditors were to randomly pick that PO at the end of the year and they want to see proof of the quote. You could have that form to show them. You are not required to use it. You never have to send that quote to us. That's just something for you for documentation. If you do have to get quotes, make sure you let the vendors know that you're getting quotes. That way they will give you their best price and not think that you're just asking them. Also give a deadline to receive the quote. A lot of times we'll have someone say that they tried to get quotes, but the vendors never responded back to them. So make sure that you give them a deadline. That way you've waited a couple weeks, you've only gotten 2 quotes back. For that 3rd quote, you can say, well, I contacted these companies who gave me a quote. When you do have the quotes, you file them with a copy of your PO in case the auditors want to see them. And then always document everything: emails, phone calls, dates that you contacted a company, dates you gave them as deadlines. That way, if anyone wants to complain and say you didn't do something, you have documentation to protect yourself. If it's something where you can't get quotes, where there's no competition, it's something unique to this one place, they're the only place that sells it, or they're the only place that provides that service, that you would have to do a sole source determination. These are needed anytime that it's going to be $5,000 or more, and quotes are not possible, and the items are not available through a bid vendor already. It is a form that you have to fill out, pretty much saying who you're buying stuff from, how much it costs, and why there's no competition. It does go through an approval process based on the amount. And then once it's gone through that process, a number is assigned, and then you'll reference that number on the requisition so that it'll be approved. The form always comes to me first to be reviewed. I do get forms in, and every time I get something, I'll usually do a Google search to see if other companies come up, and sometimes they do. If they do, I'm going to send it back and say there's competition, you need to get quotes. So Google is your friend. It does take time to get the signatures, especially if it's a large purchase, because it has to get signatures from several people at central office. So be prepared to wait if it's going to be a larger purchase. When we do assign the determination number, it is good for 1 calendar year, and it is for specific items or services. So if you know that another school has bought something from a vendor, but it wasn't the same stuff you're buying, you wouldn't be able to use that same number. But if it was for the same stuff, you could use the same number. This is something we run into a little bit. So last July, purchasing took over reviewing all requisitions. Prior to that, we only reviewed requisitions that were $5,000 or higher to make sure that all the small purchase procedures were being followed and that stuff. What we came to find out when we took over all requisition approvals is that some people would be clever enough to break their purchases up into 2 or 3 purchases so that we didn't see them. So in this example, you do one requisition for 25 widgets, a second one for 20, and a third one for 10. Each requisition might be under the 5,000, but the total of them is 5,500. You still have to follow your small purchase procedures. This applies more to school bookkeepers because sometimes they'll do separate requisitions for each teacher, which that's fine, but you still need to reference the quotes or the bid number or whatever it is if the total is going to be over 5,000 for the group of them. So just make sure if you are going to have several for the same type of stuff that you reference either the bid number or determination number or the quotes that you've got on the requisition so that we don't reject it and say, why are you breaking these up? So keep that in mind. The approved bid vendor list, like I said, if you're not getting these emails, I send them out at the beginning of every month. It's an Excel spreadsheet. It has several tabs at the bottom that are lists of vendors that we do bids for, bids by the state, bids by cooperative vendors. And then the last tab in it actually has a list of certified minority, woman, and veteran-owned businesses. If you're looking for quotes and trying to find someone you can get a quote from, you can use that. This should be your go-to place for finding vendors to order from. Like I said, I send out at the beginning of each month. It is updated. When the vendor is not on this list and there's not a bid out there for the type of things that you're getting, that's when you would use the small purchase procedures as long as it was under 40,000. Of course, over 40,000, you would contact me to start a bid or RFP. We cannot add vendors to this list. I get emails all the time. I actually got one yesterday saying, how can I have a vendor added to the approved bid vendor list? It's not possible. The only way to be added to the list is if you've been awarded a bid from us or from one of the agencies that we can use. This has become an issue, especially with t-shirts. We have a t-shirt bid that has t-shirt vendors on it that you have to use, no exceptions. We do a bid every summer. We review the bids and we award it. And I think there's 19 vendors on the list, and the majority of them are local vendors, and a lot of them are either woman or minority owned vendors as well. So you have to order t-shirts from one of our t-shirt bid vendors. So make sure that you're looking at that list. I had someone just the other day try to have a vendor number created for a t-shirt company. And I told them, no, you need to use a t-shirt vendor. So make sure you are checking this list. If you are getting something that falls into small purchase procedures that we don't have an existing vendor for, and there's not a vendor number in Munis for you to use, that's when you would fill out the vendor request form. It can be found at that same link that I showed you at the beginning. On that form, you just put the name and address and contact information of the vendor. You include if they are a minority, woman, or veteran-owned business. If they're not, just select the not applicable box. If it is for a reimbursement of an employee, then that's when you would put in their employee ID number. You also include what it is that you're buying and why the number is needed. So if you're buying widgets from company A, then you would put, we're buying widgets that we need that aren't available from bid vendors. If it's a employee reimbursement, you say this is a mileage reimbursement for so-and-so. You also include the amount of their purchase. That's just so if it's a $6,000 purchase, when I create the number, I can also remind you, hey, you need to make sure you're following procedures of getting quotes or doing a determination form. If it is an employee reimbursement, I do not need their social security number. I just need their employee ID number. Another big issue, this was a audit red flag. We had the internal audit review all of our policies and procedures over the summer. And this was the main thing that he wanted us to focus on, or one of the main things. And that is, we do not do business with Fayette County employees. If there's an employee in your school that owns a t-shirt company, we cannot do business with them. They cannot come in and if they own a food truck, we cannot do business with them. If they are an active employee with the district, we cannot do business with them. And if you do business with them, then there's going to be big time issues. It is an audit red flag. So make sure that we are not doing that. We find that a lot with referees at sports, those types of things, professional services. So make sure when you are talking to vendors that you confirm with them that they are not an employee with the district, because we are a big district. Pretty much anyone that receives a W-2 and a paycheck from the school district is considered an employee. That's even substitute teachers. And then, of course, anyone that's providing a service, where they would provide the W-9 and we send them a 1099. You know, we cannot have someone that gets a W-2 from us and a 1099 in the same year. So make sure when you are doing business with companies or vendors that they are not owned by an FCPS employee. Now I'm going to turn it over to Rachel, and she's going to go over requisition entry.
Okay, here's the screen to just make note of my extension and phone numbers if you're calling from your cell phone. We're just going to kind of go over what I'm looking for when I pull your requisition up on the screen and the requirements that we have for that. Okay, the first one, Matt just touched on the fact that we underwent an internal audit. The other big problem that we were having is that invoices are being dated before purchase orders, which is another huge audit red flag. So this first screen is just to emphasize the steps on placing an order in the district. You always make sure that you enter your requisition first. Just because you enter it on one day does not mean that it will be approved by all of the approvers in the workflow and converted to a purchase order on that day. So don't count on that. If you enter it on one day, you'll also have it converted to a purchase order on the same day. It may take a day or two depending on the amount of the purchase and how many approvers are in the workflow. So just make sure that you are planning ahead and that you get your requisition entered and your purchase order converted before you place any orders. All right, this is just the requisition entry screen that Matt referenced earlier and where you can find our information down in the bottom right corner. And then the highlighted portions on the screen here are what I'm looking at when I pull up your requisition. So we're going to cover each one of those fields. All right, the general description, vendor numbers, vendor sourcing notes, shipping information and email field, reference field, and then chart of accounts for friskies, and then commodity codes for technology items. So the general description, I just need to know if it's an office supply order, just list that in your general description. If it's a welfare payment to a utility company, you can just put student welfare. If it's a technology purchase, just technology supplies, just so that when I'm starting the review process, I know which fields need to be populated and what I'm looking for. It kind of just mentally gets me there to get ready to review your requisition. When you're looking, if you're searching for an accounts payable vendor number, you'll do that in Munis. Matt and I prefer vendor inquiry over vendor central. You'll always need to use all capital letters and then shift 8, the star. If you search for it with the star on both sides of the vendor name, that's going to pull all of the entries that has that name in it. So it'll kind of be a broader search and hopefully will help you find it faster. But once you do locate the vendor, you need to make sure that when you're looking at the vendor type, that it is an active accounts payable vendor number that you're using. There are other vendor numbers out there which are for tax office, payroll, 1099s, and food service. The one that most often is incorrectly referenced are food service vendor numbers. They start with a 9. So you just need to make sure that once you've found that vendor number again, that it is an accounts payable vendor number and that it's active, that there's not a stop that's been placed on it. All right, internal vendor numbers. The most common one that you'll be using is probably the general fund reimbursement if you're paying for things like bus transportation to the clothing center. Maybe if you have some items printed through our print shop. So these are the vendor numbers that you would use, and then the object coding. If it is something special that you're having the print shop create for you, 559 is a printing service object code. If you're just ordering things like cardstock from the print shop or blank envelopes, then you'll use 610 general supplies. We also have e-procurement vendors that we use. So that's one of the things that I look for when I'm reviewing your requisition. So any of these vendors, if you're ordering from, and the most common one for Friskies is Office Depot, you just need to make sure that you use the e-procurement option, the shop online feature, when you're ordering from any of these vendors, because if you don't, you will get rejected, and it'll be sent back to you and ask you to use e-procurement. All right, here are the instructions for using the shop online feature. So this should step you through each one of the steps, and the big thing, the takeaway for this one is to remember that when you use the shop online feature, you do not have to place the order. Once the final approver approves the requisition, it's going to automatically be converted to a purchase order. So if you call Office Depot and place this order, you're going to end up with duplicate orders. So just make sure that you do not place the order and that you have included your email on the main screen, because that's the way you're going to be notified that this order has been placed, and you'll get a confirmation from the e-procurement vendor. The vendor sourcing notes field is used if your requisition is going to be over $5,000. There weren't very many of those last year from Friskies, but if for some reason it is over $5,000, you'll need to make sure that you put either the best of 3 quotes, a determination or bid number, or a state master agreement or co-op bid number in that field. Once you do that, if you look at the bottom of the screen, that folder is going to turn yellow on the vendor sourcing notes. And that's how I know that there is information in that field that I need to review. And again, just to reiterate, what Matt discussed earlier, if your purchase is over $5,000, please do not split it into separate requisitions, because I go each day and look back at all the requisitions that have been created to make sure that there are no multiple requisitions out there that total over $5,000. So you just need to make sure that you're following state statute and keeping our district in compliance with the auditors. All right, your shipping field is another one that we look at. A lot of times, if you've gone to Gabriel Brothers, Shoe Carnival, places like that, your ship to, you can just put pick up, since you're going there to shop for the items. Save-A-Lot's another vendor that you utilize quite a bit. If it is items that will be shipped to the warehouse, that is what it defaults to when you're entering the requisition. So all items should go through the warehouse, because it saves you a step by having the guys here at the warehouse check the items in for you and receive them in Munis. So that's one less thing that you have to deal with. So if it's tangible items, just make sure that you leave at the default warehouse. If it's something that you're picking up or a payment that you're making to a utility or something like that, you can either put no delivery for a utility company, or you can enter your school or department code number in there. And again, make sure that you enter your email address on any requisition that you're entering, because e-procurement orders are notified of you that way, and we'll know who's placing the order. All right, the reference field, you can use that just if for some reason that you're placing an order for somebody else, or just as a notation to yourself who this order is going to be for, then you would just enter that information in the reference field. All right, on the line item screens, after you're off of your main screen and you're starting to enter each item that you're ordering on line screens, these are the requirements that AP has asked us to enforce. Some of these things were not enforced last year, but because of year-end closeout this year and some issues that they were having, we need all of these items on line description screens. So orders have to be on separate line screens. If you're ordering catering, you can't put Suggins quantity 1 at $700. You need to break down what it is that you're ordering from the restaurant and the unit price for each. Another reason we need that done is because sometimes people include tips on the orders, and the verbiage tips is not allowed. It can be a service fee, but it is only a certain percentage of the order that can be a service fee. So I need to be able to see an itemized breakdown of what's being ordered to make sure that we are in compliance with that. So the first thing you're going to list is the item number, and then a description of what's being ordered. And then I always just tell people to put as much information as possible, because you're less likely to get rejected if I understand what it is that's being ordered. If you're ordering, which not many of you, I don't know, I can't recall if any of you did, but if you're doing something like an online subscription for something, we need this year to have the subscription dates that the order is for. We need that information in there. Things like, I've had a lot of requisitions come through lately for your fall conference. So for that information, I would just need it to say fall conference registration, the dates of the conference, and where the conference is being held. So we need that information, and then who is going to be attending. For Friskies, obviously it's you, but in schools, it would be whatever staff is attending the conference. So if you're doing travel reimbursements, same thing, just make sure that you're listing what the conference is. If you need mileage back from that, just list the conference date, location, and your name with that. Another thing is, if you're paying utilities or welfare payments for students, please do not use the students' names. You can just reference the student number on there. The chart of accounts for Friskies is different than the chart of accounts that school and department administrative assistants use. There are fewer object codes in the Frisky matrix than there is in the general KDE chart of accounts. So what I've done though is I've gone through and I've highlighted the most commonly used object codes for Friskies, and that's going to be emailed to you after this presentation. And so I've got one chart that lists all of the object codes, and then what they did this year in the handbook for new Friskies is they put the most commonly used Munis codes, and then also listed examples of what those codes, what those services are, or items being purchased that would be assigned that object code. So some of it though, if you look at this updated one for 2024, it has asterisks, ask your district for the appropriate codes. So that's why I also recommend that you print out the first matrix that has all of the object codes in it. So I created a Google cheat sheet last year for admins. If you needed to order paper clips, you can look at the cheat sheet and it tells you paper clips and the object code that's assigned. So I recommend that you look at that if you're struggling with how to assign an object code for something, but just know that anything that's assigned an 0694 object code in the Google sheet, that's not an allowable code for Friskies. So 0697 would be an alternate object code for you to use. So 610 is, for a long time, it's just been everybody's favorite object code when you're not quite sure how to assign something. So it's just the general supply one. But over the last year, we're trying to move away from just doing this because 610 is actually classified as a consumable or disposable item, meaning that the useful life is less than 1 year. So office supplies, things like that, paper clips, staples, paper, ink pens, cleaning wipes, yes, those are 610 items, but more durable goods, we're asking that you use more appropriate object codes such as 695 for furniture items or 697 for other supplies like classroom rugs or carts, microwaves, things like that. So feel free just to reference the object code cheat sheet that I have if you're struggling, and if you don't see what you're looking for on there, you can always email or call me and we will work through that. There are restricted object codes that you should not be using. So just make sure that you're not assigning any object codes in these ranges to any of the requisitions that you enter. The travel object codes, many of you have been using that now for the registration for the fall conference. Those are 580 to 589. And then we also have the travel codes for field trip reimbursements, 894 and 898. And again, as I mentioned earlier, for clothing center reimbursements through Fayette County would be coded as 0895. I don't recall that any of you used charter buses last year, but if you were to use charter buses for travel, that object code is 0514. So again, just moving back up to the travel codes, if you're entering a requisition for a reimbursement, just make sure that you're including your name, the event, the date, and the location of the event when you're entering that requisition, so that it won't be rejected and sent back to you to ask for additional information. If you're making technology purchases, those are going to be object coded in the 650 range. I went ahead and added the graph on the right is from the main chart of accounts, but it gives you good information on items and how they should be coded. If you're ordering a printer, for example, that would be 652. If you're ordering just something like a cable that you need for a computer, that's going to be 650. Now, with technology items, the state also requires commodity codes be assigned to these. So the commodity codes from last year are no longer valid. They were updated by KDE this year. So that's also one of the pieces of information that's going to be attached to the email that we send as a follow-up is the updated commodity code chart. So some of the numbers that were on the chart last year are no longer active. So you'll just need to make sure that you're referencing the most current commodity code list. All right. When you're doing that, the commodity codes need to be entered on the requisition line item screen, not on the main screen. There is a place where you'll see commodity on the main screen, but that's not where it goes. You'll enter it on each line item because you may have multiple items, technology items that you're ordering. So this shows you where you're going to add the commodity codes, and this slide gives you the information on how to do that. Just make sure that once you've put the commodity code in, that if this question pops up on your screen asking you if you want to replace the current description, always answer no to that. This question will pop up if you've already released your requisition and forgotten to add the commodity code and I send it back to you. Or if you haven't released it yet, but remember that you forgot to put it on there and you go back to enter it, then this will pop up. And what happens is if you say yes, it's going to wipe out your description and it's going to replace it with the default description that you can see here. So if you meant to put the school and district network components on there, and you go back and enter 310.02.112 and you say yes, whatever you've typed in as your description is going to be deleted, and it's all I'm going to see when I review the requisition is school and district network components. So just make sure if you get to the screen where it's asking you, do you want to replace it, that you say no, so that it will leave your description in the line screen. For any kind of P card reconciliation that you're doing, if you've ordered technology items, those also require commodity codes. So just make sure that you're assigning commodity codes for that as well. All right, that mostly covers all the items that we're looking for, that I'm looking for when I'm reviewing the requisition. If you've entered your requisition and it's been a day or two and you're wondering why you haven't gotten a purchase order conversion email notification yet, you can go back and enter your requisition number. You can search for your requisition, and this screen will tell you what the different status codes mean on the main screen. So a lot of times people will reach out and their requisition will be released, but they're not sure why they haven't gotten it yet. So this just explains what the different statuses are. And if it is released and it hasn't been converted yet, then that means that it's waiting on an approver in the workflow. So you can check that using these instructions to see where the requisition is waiting and who you need to reach out to ask to review and either reject or approve the requisition. So these are the steps for doing that. And then just to go back, also, just if you have a requisition that's been rejected and you maybe have forgotten about it, you'll need to just go back periodically and you can type in a status search of 1 just to make sure that you don't have any rejected requisitions in the queue that you need to correct and go ahead and release again. So these two slides will help you kind of figure out, if you haven't gotten your PO number yet, what's going on. All right, here's our information again, our phone numbers. And now I'd like to see if anybody has any questions. We have 5 or so minutes that we can do that. So please feel free, if you have any questions at all, to go ahead, chime in, and we're here to help.
If anybody has questions, come off mute or type it in the chat box and I'll read it.
Anyone at all? We're more than happy to try to clarify any issues you might have had or any questions or anything like that. Randy, do you have anything that you can think of? Maybe people have reached out, or any questions?
Vonda has a question that I was actually going to ask you guys about too. The
Okay.
Codes. Are you talking about the commodity codes, Devonda? That was my thought, is I would love to send this recording with like the commodity codes or any other supporting documents.
Yes, I was meaning, like, because if I want to buy like some headphones, or I want to buy a rug for this for the center, like, is that furniture, or is that just a general supply? Like, what is that?
So a rug, something that's going to be durable, that you hope is going to last for a while, that would be $6.97. But things like headphones that plug into a computer, the state considers a technology supply. So those would be coded as $6.50 technology supply, but then also it would require the commodity code classroom instructional technology to be assigned to that as well. But that cheat sheet that we've got, that I created, both of those items are on that cheat sheet. There's over 250 items that I've included on that cheat sheet that has the commodity codes for them.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. Anybody else?
I think one of the concerns that, is the way that they have to do budget amendments, and so their budget's already set up, so the changes in codes, is gonna be an issue. So I know you sent this cheat sheet before. If you don't mind to share it with me again, and I'm gonna put it in our newsletter along with this recording,
Okay,
just so that everything's in one place.
okay.
And
Okay.
it's all on that link that I showed at the very beginning as well.
Oh, perfect. Okay,
Click on that link, it's gonna have everything on there.
perfect. Okay. Thank you both so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, everybody who was able to attend. And again, if you have questions, always please just feel free to reach out to us and we'll do what we can to help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Yeah.